Ivanna Sakhno is a Ukrainian actress best known for her roles in Hollywood films like Pacific Rim Uprising, action comedy The Spy Who Dumped Me, and series Ahsoka. Ivanna's childhood was steeped in the world of cinema thanks to her parents, director Helena Sakhno and cinematographer Anatoly Sakhno. Her acting career began in Ukraine, and at the age of 15, she set her sights on Hollywood in order to follow her acting dreams in English-speaking films. Beyond her acting, Ivanna has been an outspoken advocate for her homeland of Ukraine amidst Russia's invasion, serving as ambassador of United 24, Ukraine's official fundraising platform, focusing on education and science initiatives. She has also become an ambassador of the International Rescue Committee, a global humanitarian aid organization. She is using her platform to advocate for the millions of Ukrainians in need of humanitarian assistance, and to remind the world about the lasting impact of the Russian war against Ukraine. Thank you so much for finding time for meeting with us.
Absolutely.
How does it feel being back in Kyiv? Does it feel any different from the last time when you visited?
I think the first time when I visited Ukraine, I felt, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I felt home more than I have ever felt in Ukraine. And I think it has to do with this feeling of collective presentness of a nation, and it's something that I have never felt so potently anywhere in the world. And of course, it's for the reason of some really complex and difficult lessons that come along with being at war and knowing the value of life. This time around, I'm really inspired with how just within the city people continue to develop their businesses, supporting one another. I also am witnessing how people are getting really tired, and how do you deal with the fatigue of being at war for 10 years, but also for 2 years since the full-scale invasion, and when the entire country is really feeling it. So the difference would be, just knowing, witnessing in people's eyes the exhaustion from the war.
Yeah. How did you find out about the beginning of Russian full-scale invasion? Where were you?
I was in New York, in East Village, with my friends. We're having a movie night, and my phone was off. And my best friend, he saw it in the news, and he just whispered to me and said that I probably should just check my phone. And like, all I just remember is just tunnel vision, and you immediately begin to think of your loved ones, of your, your family, and it's a feeling of panic, and ever since, we have been living in it collectively, all together. So I was in Ukraine, and I just continued going to protests, and started working with Razum for Ukraine. It's an organization that is based in New York. So we spent about like a month and a half just going to protests in New York.
And your family was still in Ukraine at the time, right?
Most of my family are still in Ukraine. My dad at that time was relocating children and just families of soldiers to safer parts of Ukraine, and also was documenting the war in the heated regions of our country. So my grandmother is in Crimea, which has been occupied since 2014, and my other grandmother is closer to the border with Poland.
It's hard when your loved ones are not in safety and you can't really do anything about it. Like, I've experienced that as well. It's devastating when you're like, I can't help you in any way. Like, I'm powerless in this situation.
Totally, and I'm sure that you have felt this like survivor's guilt, right? It's nearly, my father tells me that it's nearly more difficult to be far away than being present in Ukraine, and to some degree, I agree, but having been here, but at the same time, nothing compares to being on the ground when the country is at war. So, but I feel you.
But that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, being far away when your homeland is at war could be incredibly isolating. How did you feel?
I felt, during the beginning, actually, I didn't feel isolated. I think, collectively all felt the support of the world, because I think the world has been witnessing just the undying spirit of Ukrainians and how deeply proud we are of our heritage and nation and the desire for independence. We've been going through it for generations, right? So it's something that the world, I felt, was finally witnessing, and I didn't feel alone. I felt supported by my friends, by the Ukrainian community, and everybody coming together. I feel a little bit more alone right now due to the fatigue and the world being a little bit more desensitized. I feel more alone now, I think, than I did in the beginning.
How do you deal with it? Like, how do we get the attention back? Because we all are experiencing the war fatigue.
Yeah.
Like, people are just less curious and just more used to the atrocities that are happening in Ukraine. They're like, oh, what is it? Another explosion, another missile attack, another school that is destroyed. We've seen it for the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's both questions, right? How do you upkeep the spirit of Ukrainians to continue fighting, which we will continue fighting. We will never back down, right? But
we don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice. But regarding the world continuing to want to listen, I think the feeling of that loneliness, I try to take as my driving force to continue speaking up. And some of it has to do with just advocacy work, continuing to bring attention to certain topics that you might have not spoken about before. So I try to advocate, the same with like advocating in Washington, D.C., bringing attention to certain legislations and just like holding Russia accountable for the war crimes and the deportation of Ukrainian children and TPS, so all those aspects. I think just as important it is to make sure that the world doesn't forget that behind those headlines are real people, children, families that have had their lives just really destroyed in so many ways. It's also about trying to make those who are in power listen and find a bit more humanity within their choices and decisions that they make.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever faced any backlash or challenges in Hollywood for your advocacy work for Ukraine, for your support for Ukraine?
I'm not sure what decisions are made behind the closed doors. I think the backlash that sometimes I face comes from just regular people, right? That are not regular people, people who don't have anything to do with my work, I don't even know, that just get mad at me for speaking about my homeland or my country being at war. I would say that the positive side, actually, I felt incredibly supported by those who I work with. The production team and the whole crew, when I was working on a TV show during just the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the support and understanding that I had felt from them was something deeply moving. That kind of humanity you really hope to have within every environment that you go into, to the point where I had to go into pre-production just like a week after the full-scale invasion, and I asked for a little bit more time so I can be in New York at the protests, and they gave it to me and they understood. So if anything, I'm grateful that in my experience I have felt supported by those who I work with. That's
great. That's really good to hear. Do you think it has changed over time? Like, you know, it's been 2 years, people are getting a bit more tired, and I've heard from my friends who relocated due to the war that at first they got a lot of support and a lot of understanding and a lot of empathy, and now a lot of people abroad are like, can you please go home now? Like, we're a bit tired of you. Like, it's great and all, but...
It's incredibly heartbreaking because I try not to judge people being used to the information, because I think it's nearly like natural for people to once again become desensitized towards news cycles that are coming in for like 2 years in a row. So the question was regarding the change, right?
Yeah.
If I witness, that's sort of becoming used to the fact that it's been going on. So yeah, the change I have felt and feel to this day, it's about once again finding ways to inform them and continue informing them in a way that hopefully would make them listen. It's heartbreaking in a way because you think of the children that are getting shelled and lives destroyed, and it's once again, it's not the war in Ukraine. It's not about the headlines. It's about the reality and the fact that it's a human tragedy. I think it's important for the world to remember. It's something that a lot of Ukrainians keep talking about. It is that we are the shield for Europe and the world, and we are fighting for the democratic values around the world. And it's not just about the chance and the ability to live. At this point, it's about the ability to survive for a nation.
Yeah.
So it's reminding about that.
So you are an ambassador for United 24 and for the International Rescue Committee. What does that advocacy work look like? What are your responsibilities?
I just started working with the International Rescue Committee, and it's been incredible to witness how deeply involved they are in rebuilding Ukraine and in providing tools for the people, not just short term, but long term. We were able to witness, go to the centers in Katowice in Poland and meet with their clients, the refugees, and International Rescue Committee is providing them with the ability to study Polish, study the history of Poland as well, because they're now, at this moment in time, they didn't have a choice, they had to flee their home, but they are now part of the country of Poland and the society. So they're providing them with language lessons and providing them with also the knowledge that is their rights in the workplace and what they're able to ask for, and help them create businesses. We were able to visit this bakery that was created by this woman from Ukraine. She had to flee her home, and she received a grant from the International Rescue Committee and created this bakery that she works in by herself. But she has 2 children. She doesn't have a husband nearby, and the fact that she's, like, her resilience and strength, the ability to create a business on her own.
In a foreign country.
In a foreign country, learn Polish, and also be a really great mother. Her children are, like, studying martial arts and studying different languages, and she's able to be such a, like, really a beacon of hope. That's to me, she's to me a prime example of the strength of a Ukrainian woman. We're able also to speak to the frontline staff in Ukraine and speak to the young women in the safe space for women in different parts of Ukraine. The International Rescue Committee has created, and just the fact that this organization is providing psychological help and physical help, providing humanitarian aid, and teaching Ukrainians how to help themselves and be there for themselves in the long-term solutions. And even those who are outside of Ukraine, I know that with the tools that they have gained through this program, they're going to be able to bring back and contribute to a more nourishing society in Ukraine as well.
I heard in your previous interview of you speaking about, the negative stereotypes that outside world has about Ukrainian women in particular. Have you seen that shift or change since Ukraine got more attention due to this war?
I have witnessed people being more aware of Ukraine as a country, and those who want to learn, they will learn. So it depends individually on the person. I'm witnessing more interest in Ukrainian stories, which is very hopeful. There is a long way to go, but I am witnessing change. Yeah.
That's great. How did it make you feel that Ukraine won its first Oscar for 20 Days in Mariupol, yet the documentary being excluded for the international TV broadcasting of the Academy Awards?
I think the fact that it was excluded speaks for itself, but his win, and more importantly even his speech, was incredibly powerful, I found, and something that the world needed to hear. I'm really proud of the team, and I'm really proud of this film. I think it's another chance for the world to hear about Ukraine. And as we were speaking earlier, it's about reminding the world that this is a real issue and a real tragedy that is happening. I'm really proud of the entire team in this film. It carries a certain silence, and it's very specific in the way that it's told. And there's great value in this story. So as he said, we all wish that we didn't have to get this win, and this film didn't need to exist. But the fact that they were witnessed and they won, I feel great pride for them and gratitude.
Absolutely.
They're true heroes.
Yeah, and I think it was amazing that the world got to see not only that film, but that speech was really powerful. What do you think the world still gets wrong about Ukraine?
It's rather if they have, with each step they're learning more and more about Ukraine. I think it has to do with like educating people regarding even geographically where Ukraine is. I remember, when I first moved to the United States, they would ask me, if it's part of Russia, or because I had the exact same experience. And when you just moved to abroad, I lived in America for a year, and with my classmates, I asked them to point to Ukraine on a map, and they couldn't. Like they would choose like the smallest country somewhere like on the outskirts of Europe, and I'm like, no, the big one in the middle. And also, Ukraine is the biggest country in Europe, right? And so I think it's about educating people, and it's about the fact that that lack of knowledge comes from not knowing that there was Ukraine before the Soviet Union, right? So those basic fundamental things, like the history of Ukraine, where it's located, and the fact that we have our own history, traditions, our own language that is really beautiful. It's those things are the ones that I hope that people begin to get right. What about you? What do you think people don't get right about Ukraine still? I think there is still a confusion, between the separation of, like Russian mentality versus Ukrainian mentality. I feel like there's still that kind of grouping of like, like all Eastern countries or like post-Soviet countries, they're all kind of the same. Because I don't know if it changed much in recent several months while I've been living in Ukraine, but there's always been that, like people from Ukraine are like in these like 5 categories in the movies. They're, I don't know, ballerinas, gymnasts, mafia. Absolutely. And kind of that, like I've been referred to as like, Russian mafia, because I was making a joke about like my dad or something. Yeah, but that is in the importance of storytelling and educating people also through storytelling. And that's why I'm glad that there is more films that come from Ukraine, authentic storytelling that is being more available in the world for people to see. But also we have so many wonderful filmmakers that have paved the path for so many others back in the day, right? Dovzhenko and Ilyenko and Mykolaichuk, all of those are giants who have had the chance to actually bring Ukrainian culture into the world. So I think that it's about the world wanting to study history and be aware of the world that they live in, and it's about our filmmakers actually choosing stories that they also want to tell. Is there any upcoming projects or initiatives relating Ukraine that you're particularly excited about? Well, my beginning of collaboration with the International Rescue Committee is something that I'm deeply grateful for and excited about. I hope that I'll be able to come back to Ukraine soon enough. I continue to do the advocacy work. It's just the same as it's been 2 years ago, a year ago, and now. I just continue to do what I can in order to help my country. What do you hope your legacy will be in terms of your contribution to, educating people about Ukrainian culture and your advocacy work? My legacy. It's an interesting question because I don't necessarily think about my legacy in helping my country. I don't have an answer to that question. I hope that I'm just what I can do for Ukraine is helpful, and it contributes to the healing of our children, and hopefully maybe less children experience the trauma of war to a scale that they are experiencing right now. It's step by step. We do individually and collectively everything that we can. So I don't have an answer to your question. That's fair. I think that's the only way to deal with the pain of this war, is to be feeling like you're part of it, that you're helping, that you're bringing the victory somehow closer. Yeah. My Ukrainianism is part of my DNA. I nearly don't have a choice. Everything I am is Ukraine. These are my roots, and witnessing a child being shelled and knowing that there's children that they have witnessed their mother being raped and father killed. You don't need much more to be dedicated to helping your country.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Slava ЗСУ.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you're on your way out of the country, actually, so you're traveling. So thanks so much for finding time and for just speaking with me and sharing your experience.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if you'd like to see more interviews and just more content about Ukraine, make sure to subscribe to the Kyiv Independent YouTube channel.